Ooh, what's that whistling? All right. 2 minutes. Oh my gosh. Don't do this. Okay. Are we live? Can people see me? Six people are waiting. Okay. Okay, we're almost live. Who has the pretty birds that I hear?
Oh, that's me. Sorry.
No, it's nice.
Should I shut my windows?
No, it's nice. I like it.
I have this problem
No,
anytime I Zoom call.
no, they're nice.
We don't use air conditioning or anything. It's just always windows open and
Well, Maui, you know, it's expensive.
if it's distracting at all, let me know and I'll shut the windows and turn on a fan.
No, I like it. All right, let's see. Oh, oops. Where did that go? Are we live, CJ? Cool. All right. We've got some people here. Let's see. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Cheyenne Anderson, and I am here with Tybee Island Marine Science Center. And we are going to talk a lot about whale conservation with these 4 lovely women here. I am really excited. They're all from different time zones, so it was a lot of coordinating, getting us all together to talk about what we all love, which is whales. I am sure that we all share that in common. Some of us may work with different species of whales. Some of us, you know, might just like to look at whales, but we all have our love of whales. So I'm glad that you are all joining us today. Thank you so much. So we're going to get started by introductions. So we have Grace Olson. She is a researcher over at Pacific Whale Foundation. She works in Maui, which is really exciting. So they are in the middle of the day there, still nice and sunny. And I guess it's getting chilly over there. So thank you. Welcome, Grace.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thanks of course. Of course, yes. Oh, more people coming. That's so exciting. We have Jessica McCordick down there. I don't know where she is on your screen, but she's below me. And Jessica, tell us a little bit about what you do over where you are in Woods Hole.
So I actually work as an acoustician. So I research sounds that animals make. And right now I'm working on, we can get into it maybe a little bit later, but I'm working on a collaborative project we have with Parks Australia, looking at compliance of vessel passages within some of their marine parks.
Awesome. That's so exciting. And what time is it for you? Because I'm very bad at geography, admittedly. So
I'm in Eastern Standard Time right now. So 4:03.
All right. Same as me. And thank you so much, Kathy, for joining us. Kathy, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do and where you are?
Yeah, hi, my name is Kathy George, and I'm with the Marine Mammal Center in Sausalito, California. So it's 1 o'clock here in the afternoon. And at the Marine Mammal Center, I lead their whale entanglement response and prevention efforts. So I'm one of the permitted responders that can go out when a whale is entangled in marine debris or fishing gear and help release that whale. I also work very closely with the Dungeness crab fishery on the prevention side and working with the fishermen how we can reduce the risk of entanglement in the first place.
Wow, that is so exciting. A lot of dangerous things happen with entanglement. I've only ever watched videos, but that is very exciting. And thank you so much for coming. I am from California. I went to San Francisco State University, so
Right.
I do miss it sometimes. A beautiful state, very far away from me. And Miss Sharon Young, Mrs. Sharon Young, thank you so much for joining us. Why don't you tell us what you do?
Try to figure out how to get myself off mute. Well, I am a marine specialist for the Humane Society of the United States, and I started my career out on the field studying right whales. But I've been working for the Humane Society for a number of years, and I help our attorneys with litigation to help protect the animals. I've testified in congressional committees.
Wow.
I write comments to the federal government when they want to do something that we think may not be adequate to protect right whales. So have mouth and computer keyboard will travel.
That's amazing. You all have done such amazing things. Grace, you're out in Maui. Why don't you give us a little bit about what you do out there? I know that you're with cetacean research. What does that involve for you?
Yeah, so I am a research biologist with Pacific Whale Foundation, and one of my main roles is we do research on whales and dolphins here in Maui in the Hawaii area. We also have research that is done in Australia, on the east coast of Australia, and down in South America, working with humpback whales in Ecuador. And then we have projects working with the Chilean blue whales down in Chile. I'm primarily located in Hawaii, but I have done a season of our field research on humpback whales in Australia. But my main role within the foundation, within our research department, is I curate and do most of our work with our Odonocete species, so dolphins. So we do whale and dolphin research here, and actually I am new to the field of working with large whales with this position, and it's been a lot of fun for me to learn about baleen whales and humpbacks specifically. So we do field-based data collection, and a lot of our work is really focusing on human-based threats and conservation efforts, and using science to really advocate for policy and working towards protection for different species and populations. And in Hawaii, we're specifically focusing on false killer whales, which are an endangered species. That's where a lot of our efforts are focused. And then we also study all of the other Odonocete species in the area. And then we also do work with the humpback whales that are just starting to get here. I saw my first humpback whales of the season just a couple weeks ago from shore, so it's quite exciting.
Yay. That is so exciting. All of you women do such amazing things. I actually used to work with Pacific Whale Foundation, not the same thing that Grace and Jessica used to do. Grace still does, Jessica used to do, but I was a naturalist myself, so that's how I met those two lovely ladies. We met out on the island of Maui. And, for all those wondering, all of you listeners, thank you for joining us. Let's go around and let's say, what got you interested, Jessica, working with whales and even just the ocean? What got you kind of piqued your interest? Was it a young start? Was it later? What were you feeling?
Sure. So we go back far enough. There was a summer program when I was in high school, which was my first experience. It was part of the Center for Talented Youth program through Johns Hopkins University. And it was essentially a summer field research science experience, kind of get your feet wet in the field. And for me, that was really important because I had always felt, drawn to some sort of biology field. I was one of those kids, I always loved animals. I loved seeing all the, critters in the backyard and everywhere. But I never really knew what direction that would go. And so I kind of took that opportunity. And part of that was a week sailing and camping around the Chesapeake Bay, which for me was in my own backyard. I'm originally from Maryland. So it was a little bit of an adventure close to home. And so I fell in love with being on boats and sort of seeing kind of the field research aspect of marine science. And so from there, when I did my undergraduate work at College of the Atlantic, I got really involved with a nonprofit there called Allied Whale. And with them, I was able to do a part-time work study program with them, and I learned about photo identification. So recognizing individual humpback whales by their flukes and recognizing individual finback whales by their dorsal fin. And I just got really excited about it and got to do some more field work with them. And that's sort of where the whale component of the interest in science and marine science like really just kind of solidified, and I haven't turned back since.
Haven't looked back since.
Right.
And Sharon, it's great for you to be here. Thank you so much. How about you? When did you first get interested in your life with marine science and whales in general?
Well, it actually goes back to doing wildlife rehab starting as a teenager with terrestrial animals. Went off to college and then grad school, got a job at a nature center just when whale watching was starting in Massachusetts in the early 90s, because yeah, I'm that old. And so I worked as a whale watch naturalist, met a guy who was doing research in Canada with blue whales and right whales, and went up there to work with them for a good while. And so my past is somewhat checkered in terms of starting in one place and ending up somewhere else, which kind of is what happens in most people's lives, I guess.
Absolutely.
I'm just really lucky that I've always been working with animals and for protecting them. And it's been a passion that allows you to have a lot of flexibility in what you do, as long as you're not expecting to get rich from it.
I hear that. Absolutely. But I would say we are rich in experience and rich in just absolute passion in our lives. So I like to tell people, my wallet may be thin, but my heart is definitely full. So
no, for sure. And also the things that most of us have seen working in the field, a lot of people would give their eye teeth to be able to see and experience.
Absolutely.
And I just feel really blessed for that, definitely.
I do too. Having worked in Maui with those humpback whales briefly, and getting to work with just all kinds of different animals in my field, I can absolutely relate. Kathy, your interests, where did they start? Were they young? Were they old? Were you, just looking at Discovery Channel one day and thought, man, I want to do that? Or what got you excited about it?
Yeah, I was always wowed by the ocean, and I grew up in Indiana, far from an ocean, but my parents loved Florida and we went down there every year to go visit. And I remember seeing the dolphins jumping in the wild and just being amazed. And I actually went to school. I have a degree in industrial engineering, so I took a very circuitous route to get where I am right now. But I moved out to California and just fell in love with the coastline out here, the wildlife and everything that is related to that. And I started working in high tech, and I lost my job during a time of the dot-com bust, and I started volunteering at the Marine Mammal Center, where I now work, 20 years ago. And kind of through my hands-on experience with the Marine Mammal Center, I was connected to some really wonderful people that took me out in the field, and I took classes, and I was just amazed and in awe of what beauty we have in the natural world. And I saw the impact that humans were having on it. And that's where I decided to kind of make a change in my career path. And this is what I wanted to do, and have just been working very hard to get where I am right now, and really blessed to be able to say what I do and not have that as my second job, my unpaid job, that I have the paid job to support. So yeah, I'm really happy to be where I am now.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And, you mentioned, you said, what did you just say that really piqued my interest? You changed careers, and I find that awesome. So, since I was little, 3 years old, was like, animals, that's it. That's what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm going to do, but animals. And my mom was like, cool, vet. And I was like, no, something else. And so now I am, a marine naturalist. So it's always been my passion, but it's great to hear that, a marine biologist can become a marine biologist at any time. So that is really awesome. Really, I think, thank you for sharing. I think that's good to hear for some people, especially young ears that might be listening. Grace, any personal heroes or any interests that piqued you when you were little? Anything that your personal hero? What got you into this?
A very good question. I really enjoyed hearing everyone else's answers as well, because it really spoke to me that there are a lot of different directions to get to different points, and we're all working in different aspects of the marine mammal field. And similar to Kathy, I'm from the Midwest and grew up nowhere near the ocean. I never actually even saw a dolphin or a marine mammal in the wild until I was a teenager. But I had a really strong interest from when I was very young, a toddler. I think I used to say I wanted to be a dolphin when I grew up,
Obviously.
which turns out you can't do. And
Yet.
even as a kid, I would always draw pictures of me wanting to be like a marine mammal trainer. Is kind of where my original direction went, and then it veered from that. And I believe when I was around 11 years old, there was an IMAX movie that came out about dolphins, and it had the researcher Kathleen Dudzinski in it, and she was featured. And she does work down in the Bahamas with Atlantic spotted dolphins and bottlenose dolphins. And she kind of became a personal hero for me to some extent because she was doing research. And I found that fascinating. And I was like, wow, I want to actually study these animals in the wild. And that was around the same time I saw my first dolphin in Florida. One of my first trips to Florida, similar to Kathy. I had a lot of pushback on the realities of and the ability of, I was growing up in Minnesota. So me saying I wanted to be a marine biologist and study wild marine mammals, I had teachers who, directly said, that's very unlikely, Grace. You're very unlikely that you will even leave the state. If you're interested in biology, you could do more aquatic or freshwater aquatic studies. But I ended up going to university down in Florida, and in my undergrad started doing research, working with Eckerd College Dolphin Research Project. And at my second year of undergrad, I was able to start getting experience in the research field. So I kind of evolved in my desire of what I wanted to do, but I always kind of had that direction of wanting to understand and learn more about and kind of help protect these animals that I found them very fascinating. I found them to be beautiful, and that passion developed at a very young age. And it's clearly from talking to these other women, it came in other directions. I've never personally met Kathleen Dudzinski, and I've not, said she's like been a personal hero, but she definitely led my direction to some extent. And there was a lot of hard work and, strong women who helped influence me along the way.
That's exciting. That's awesome. I've never heard of Kathleen Dudzinski, you said? That's awesome. Well, you just taught me something, so I'm going to have to look into her. That is really awesome. I was reviewing my own personal heroes, and I was thinking, Jeff Corwin, David Attenborough, and these are all men. And I thought, I don't see much representation of myself as a child. I loved the Kratt brothers, which are now the Wild Kratts. And so there's a lot of men in this field. And I thought, I want to be that. And I'm wondering, Sharon, do you feel that you've seen a lot of men kind of showcased and less women? And do you have any personal heroes or heroes that you look up to?
Well, yeah, it's overwhelming male. There's no question. Go to any marine mammal conference and, there are a lot of women, but they're all in way junior positions, not senior people. But in terms of personal heroes, I have to tell you, it's not a marine mammal person. It's Jane Goodall.
Of course, she is amazing.
There's somebody who had a male mentor, but went out into the boonies and made no money. Sounds familiar to probably everybody here. But she came out with reams of data, published it, then went back and got a PhD. But she called attention to species and ecosystems that nobody had paid attention to. And we now know are in vanishing ecosystems and in dire straits. So, I would have to put her way up at the top, because I think she's a good example to all of us about what one individual who's dedicated and smart and articulate, because her ability to convey that passion is what made a lot of people interested in chimpanzees in particular, but I think touch people like me as well with, I should do something, I can do something, and I will do something.
I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, Jane Goodall, of course, we all know her and definitely respect and revere her. If I could meet her, Oh, you know, everyone asks what's your favorite celebrity and who would you faint if you met, and mine's never like Ryan Reynolds. Mine's always like, oh, Shane Goodall. So I completely agree. She's an incredible woman. But you know, I think you all are incredible women yourselves, and I'm sure there are little girls and little boys even who look up to you. Jessica, is there any personal heroes that you might have?
It's funny you had mentioned, you know, folks like Jeff Corwin and Steve Irwin comes to mind. When I was young, like those were my, you know, every time the TV was on, I was watching Kratz Creatures or, you know, one of those shows, Animal Planet, all the time. And so, you know, you can't deny the outreach component of those programs in terms of inspiring, you know, just a general interest in wildlife and conservation to a greater extent too. In terms of, but it is interesting because as you were asking that, I too mostly thought of men in the field. But there are also obviously some amazing, powerful women in our field. One who comes to mind is Sylvia Earle. And even though, you know, my little corner of marine science is pretty different from hers, I've always, you know, kind of followed her work and just been very interested in how passionate and eloquently she speaks about marine conservation issues. And, you know, she's just one of these people very similar to Jane Goodall who, you know, has had this amazing career, and it's really fueled by a genuine passion for taking care of the planet and the marine systems. And I've always found that pretty inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely. In the comments here, we have Lori mentioning Rachel Carson, which I do remember Silent Spring, and that really stuck with me when I first read and heard about her, and Sylvia Earle as well. Some of my colleagues have met Sylvia Earle, and I am jealous. They have a book signed by her, and it's amazing to meet women who have made it so far and have made a name for themselves. It's truly inspiring. And Kathy, how about you for personal heroes? You know, it's okay if it's a guy. I admitted mine was a man, so it is perfectly acceptable. But hopefully, we are shaping a different world and becoming those women ourselves. So, who influenced you when you were young or old, or when you changed your mind in your career? Who kind of showed you a way?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with what the names that everyone has shared so far. Sylvia Earle had a huge impact on me, but also kind of taking it to a reality level. I find heroes all around me, and I find people that I look up to, aspire to, respect, that I meet on a daily basis. And I feel like it's everyone that I met as I was developing myself for the career I'm in right now that have had that influence on me, and I carry a piece of each of them in me. So there's a lot of women, especially. I look at jobs that I've had in museums before and the scientists that have been doing the hard work there. I look through my volunteer efforts and the leadership that I had through those programs. And I mean, thinking about my experience as a volunteer, Frances Gulland, who was a former vet at the Marine Mammal Center, I remember seeing her on top of a blue whale in shark infested waters doing a necropsy. And I'm just really impressed, especially at the center. We have a lot of women veterinarians that are there, and there's women that are doing the work that typically in the past men have done. So I look around me for my heroes.
That's awesome. And I feel that as well. And that's why I invited all of you on here. You women are heroes yourselves. It's incredible to see, you know, all the different ages and different places in your careers. And, you know, I think if you're anything like me, I've had moments where I've been so low that I wanted to quit, give up, move different careers because it's hard to follow your dreams, and it's no cakewalk. So I think you are all very strong women to continue on in such a male competitive, male heavy field. So you yourselves are heroes. And I wanted to ask Sharon, if you felt you've had many roadblocks as you've gone throughout your career.
Yeah, I guess I'm really lucky that I haven't. I'm pretty good about seeing doors that maybe I can kick open.
Nice.
So
Kick open. I love that.
I like that too.
And I came in at the right time. I mean, the field was brand new in the 90s. So it was a lot easier to get in then than it is now. I've mentored a number of grad students, and it's tough for males and females. There's just not a lot of jobs. There's not, and a huge reliance on interns and volunteers and things like that that don't necessarily lead to an actual job.
Mm-mm.
So yeah, I'm really fortunate that I started so early because I didn't have to face a lot of roadblocks. The roadblock was there were no jobs. You just have to be willing to live in poverty. And as long as you are willing to do that and ruin your complexion sitting out on the boat on the ocean for a long period of time, you know, then you're golden. My partner at the time was very helpful. But then when I was earning money on whale watch boats, they were good about letting me bring my daughter with me. So
That's awesome.
it was
Yeah.
helpful because I think a big roadblock for a lot of women is if you want a family.
Yes, and we had briefly talked about that before we started this whole thing. Women who want both, you know, this field and a family. Oftentimes, you know, we're out on boats or we're out in field work. We're working long hours at our computers, and it's all very passion and love filled. I think, you know, a lot of people see scientists and don't see the two marry, the research and the passion. It's there, it's married together, and so I think it is difficult to have a family, a partner, and do this career. It's already a pretty difficult career, and I'm glad you started when you did. And as for people like Jessica and Grace and myself, and maybe Kathy, even though you changed careers, that's pretty exciting. Maybe there's other roadblocks that y'all have faced. Grace, have you experienced any kind of roadblocks in your career and your search for the perfect fit?
Well, I'm fairly new in my career, but getting to this point, I'd say there was some roadblocks, a large one being that, you know, I was not from an area where I had the opportunity to, there was no real universities or schools that I could get the training in what I was interested in doing. But I thankfully had a very supportive family who helped me to get to the places that I needed to be. And I've been very fortunate and met a lot of people and made connections. And a lot of my advisors throughout my development and my schooling in undergraduate and graduate school and in other projects I've worked with have been women. So I've had the influence similar to what Kathy said in life and similar to what Sharon said of, you know, and you as well, just the difficulties of being a woman in this field. All of the women that I have worked under in various projects doing dolphin research around the world have had families and had to go through those struggles and kind of been an influence in that way for me. But for me personally, I would say a roadblock that I kind of hit at a low point was after I graduated from my undergraduate. I wasn't quite ready to go directly into graduate school. I knew I wanted to find a career doing research, but I needed a little bit of a break. And so kind of figuring things out in between there was a bit of a challenge. And then when I decided I was ready to go back to graduate school, it is a different sort of process in the research field where you don't just go to any school. So when I initially had wanted to go to back to grad school, I was reaching out to different labs and different advisors or researchers that are with different universities to see if they had funding to bring on a student or room in their lab to bring on a student. It's a bit different process. And the first time I reached out to people all over the world, nobody really had the funding or the room in their lab. So it just didn't make sense and it didn't work for me to go at that time. And that was kind of disheartening, but it turned out to work for the best because I ended up getting a position doing research in Brazil in working with Amazon river dolphins, which is where I was able to gain a lot of experience and learn a lot about cultural differences and how aspects of communication and science and conservation, how that all goes together, so where things maybe didn't go the direction I had wanted, it's kind of brought me to a different place. So I think that was one of the larger ones. I was a little scared once I did go back to graduate school. As Sharon said, the number of jobs are pretty minimal. So once I graduated with my master's, I was very worried about finding a position, especially an entry-level position in research. A lot of organizations depend on interns or on paid volunteers, and that's a difficult thing to deal with for a lot of people who are trying to get into this field. And it's become a discussion, which through the Society of Marine Mammals, which is very promising. But I've thankfully, through connections and through persevering when there have been, I wouldn't say I kicked down the doors, but I've had opportunities that came to me that have worked out maybe for the better, even though I saw something as a very disheartening roadblock at the time. But I have been very fortunate and had a lot of support and privilege, honestly, in helping me get the experiences that I've had to get me to this point in my career.
That's awesome. And I think a lot of people can relate. I know that I can. I know that, you know, there just hasn't even been doors to kick open. There was no door. So I understand that struggle. And, you know, I know that kids are obviously very hard to deal with sometimes when you're doing this. Kathy, you mentioned you have a child. How do you deal with, you know, disentanglements and a child? And is that difficult for you?
Yeah, it's a complicated matter. Life can be complicated at times. Luckily, I have an incredibly supportive partner that helps me out when he can. Otherwise, I mean, entanglements can happen any day of the year. So it's not something that we can plan for. So I think on the entanglement front, I am just ready with gear and tools in car and in accessible locations that I could easily get to go out to respond to the entanglement, and then hope that kind of the timing wise, we can make it work with my partner. And sometimes I'm out in the field and sometimes I'm on shore supporting the team from behind the computer and helping out with communications and logistics that way. So there's different aspects that I could stay involved with. So I'm able to find a balance. It was a lot easier without him, but I wouldn't change things right now.
Good. That's beautiful to hear. And Jessica, you know, I know a little bit about you personally as we are friends, but the lovely folks here do not. So you are out at Woods Hole. That's right? Woods Hole is where you are?
Well, because of COVID, we're all working remotely right now. So I'm in a different part of Massachusetts, but yes. So
I forget about COVID.
So I currently work at the Northeast Fisheries Science Center, which is under NOAA, and I'm in the Protected Species branch in the Science Center. And then we have a passive acoustics research group within that. So it's very nested.
Very nested within. Yes. And do you feel you've had a lot of roadblocks getting to that position, or do you feel that you've been, as Grace said, you know, very supported and even privileged in your experience?
I would say more the latter, honestly. You know, whether it's been family support, moral support from, you know, as I've kind of come up through undergraduate and grad school, and then, you know, sort of these early career positions. You know, I have such a support network I found in fellow students when I was a student, as well as my mentors and advisors along the way, as well as, you know, my current coworkers. But again, kind of getting at sort of echoing Grace and Sharon a bit, the main roadblock I would say was kind of dealing with navigating those unpaid or sort of underpaid positions, particularly when I was in my undergraduate career, sort of trying to figure out how to deal with that. I have been very fortunate throughout all of my time working with marine science so far. I've only had to take one completely unpaid position. However, to do that, I was sharing a house with, I believe it was 8 other people, and I was sharing a room with one other person. And, you know, we didn't have a bed frame. It was like a mattress mattress on the floor. It was very, very bohemian.
Been there. I might be there
But
now.
that summer I was able to spend part of the time out at a field station. So that kind of, it ended up, working out. But yeah, I would say that's been the major roadblock, is trying to, I guess essentially avoid taking unpaid work as much as possible while still trying to succeed in the field, which is essentially built around those types of positions.
It is. Yeah, it's very much, this field is very much on the backs of unpaid work. It's very much on the backs of people with big passions. So it's not easy to follow your dreams. We all do this for the love of all these animals, whether it is a terrestrial animal, which whales used to be. So either for terrestrial or what we're here for, which is our whales. We are really concerned here on the Georgia coast for the North Atlantic right whale. I know some of you do not work directly with them, but Grace, you work with humpbacks, and Jessica, you work with all different kinds with the acoustics. And Kathy, you work a little bit more closely with our right whales. What, if anything, do you feel, Kathy, is there any kind of improvements you see with the North Atlantic right whale? Is there hope? What kind of insights do you have on the population? And for those of you who don't know, the North Atlantic right whale is a critically endangered species with, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's less than about 400 individuals out there. That number could have changed. I could have an old number, so please correct me, but I do know it is not very good. So Kathy, do you have any insights on this beautiful animal and what can we do?
Yeah, actually, I think Sharon could probably answer this question better than I can with the right whale. Most of my experiences with whales on the West Coast, so humpback whales, gray whale, but I have worked with we have a slightly similar issue out here on the West Coast. Fortunately, we have healthy whale populations right now. We actually have growing whale populations off of our coast, and humpback whales are doing well right now. But we have had issues with the Dungeness crab fishery in the past entangling whales. Unfortunately, they were the only fishery required to mark their gear. So when the gear was able to be identified, it was pointed to that fishery. We're not in the same situation as the East Coast with the lobster fishery, but I really think out here on the West Coast, we've brought the fishermen together with the state agencies, the federal agencies, the nonprofits, and we're working to make changes to the fishery from whether it's a policy standpoint, a gear standpoint, a data standpoint, understanding where the whales are so we can inform decisions about the fishing. Taking all of those different efforts together and really working on the prevention side. So that's what we're doing on the West Coast, kind of taking our guidance from the East Coast with what is happening with the take reduction team. I really hope that the right whale can be saved. And I know there's a great film coming up on Friday called Entangled that explores that issue. And
check that out, everyone.
And I want to turn it over to Sharon, because I think you probably have the best answer on the right whales.
Definitely, Sharon, go for it.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that is true about working in conservation is when things go well, it's like almost nothing can bring you down. But when things are not going well, it's really hard to keep yourself going. And right whales are an example of that. I mean, we have 94 reproductive age females in that population. And basic conservation biology 101 tells you need more females than males. Mm-hmm. And right now we're male biased to begin with, but the reproductive rate is very low. Females are getting entangled more often than males, which will impact their body condition, which in turn will impact their ability to be reproductive. We have already lost one calf this year. We had 1 year with no calves born.
I remember that year.
And it's pretty grim. I think about the situation on the West Coast with vaquita, which are also verging on extinction now, even closer than right whales for sure. Mm-hmm. also a fishery related issue, although not a bycatch issue in the same way. I mean, it's an illegal fishery for a totoaba that's accidentally catching the small porpoises is what they are. And here it's also a bycatch issue. No one's trying to kill them.
Right.
It's just there's so much fishing gear that it's a field of ropes they have to navigate, and it's not an easy thing to do. Most right whales have been entangled more than once in their life. And so it's pretty grim. And I'm going to just keep depressing myself if I keep talking like this.
Well,
The good news is that, you know, we have lawyers. Whales have lawyers. You know, we're doing what we can to try to push the government in the right direction against very strong economic pressures from the fishing industry, which is really concerned about maintaining their bottom line if they have to change how they're fishing. And right whale survival depends on changing how they're fishing.
absolutely. You know, we have seen some stories of animals from the brink of extinction and then them coming back. So I would say not all hope is lost for our right whale. They're still out there. You know, they've made it this far. So let's, you know, keep trying to I think science communication is very important. Grace, I know that you are out in Maui away from our little North Atlantic right whales. Have you worked, I know there is a population, I believe in Australia, Southern Atlantic right whales. Did you get to work with them at all?
Southern right whales, where I was in Australia, it was towards the northern extent of their range, and their population is increasing, and so they're starting to see it more up in that area. And so while I was there in 2019, I was able to see one southern right whale. So we collected data on that. We don't specifically, through my organization, do research on the southern right whales, but through collaborations, we collected the photo IDs that we can and the basic data from the field and submitted that to other researchers who are working with them. So it was kind of cool because for a long time they were not seen up in that area.
Mhm.
And I know year previous there had been a few more and some others in calves that had come up. So I was along the eastern coast of Australia, kind of right in the middle, and often you think of their ranges further south in Australia.
That's really exciting. You got to see one. If we have time, I would love to hear everyone's kind of favorite story that they've had, whether it's, you know, an interaction with a child, you know, an interaction with an animal, an interaction with a member of the public. If we have time, I'd love to hear that. But before that, Jessica, I know you work with sound, and recently, I believe they just found recorded a North Atlantic right whale singing. I believe I saw something about that. And what do you do with the acoustics, and what do you think about, you know, the North Atlantic right whale? I know they don't have a lot with their sound. I know they have like an up call and they have, you know, a gunshot. What can you speak to on their acoustics?
So you might have invited me to go down a bit of a rabbit hole. So they actually have a ton of different calls. It's interesting you mentioned there was a recent publication on potential song in, it might have been the North Pacific right whale that they did the recordings, but the species are assumed to behaviorally be very similar. So it's possible that it might be happening in the North Atlantic right whales as well. Bowhead whales, which are a closely related species, do have well-documented singing behavior. And a fun fact about bowhead whale song is that it is recorded in the females, which is pretty uncommon. You think of song and sort of these showy displays, and usually it's males. So it's kind of apropos for our discussion. Sort of those strong women bowhead whales out there.
I love it. I love it.
But in terms of the right whale acoustics, they do make a bunch of different calls. The one that most people are probably familiar with is the up call, which is thought to be their contact call. So just kind of a, you know, all right whales are known to make an up call, whether they're male or female or adults or juveniles. Calves even sort of have a blurby version of it, kind of a babbling version of it. And so we can use those calls to detect when right whales are in a particular area. So there's actually a network of hydrophones and that are sort of just out in the ocean listening all the time. We also have collaborations with WHOI, which is Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, and we send out passive acoustic recording gliders. So they're mobile platforms that are listening for multiple species of whales, including the right whales, essentially in real time. So we can know whether there's right whales in an area from those bottom mounted recorders or the gliders, essentially, within a day or so, sometimes even sooner, depending on how confident the analyst can be in identifying it as a right whale. And actually recently it's very exciting because there was essentially, so when right whales are seen, so either by vessels or aerial survey teams, it can trigger these dynamic management areas, which is essentially areas where vessels are required to reduce their speed or avoid an area depending on the different area, essentially saying there were right whales seen, you should slow down. And recently I believe it was maybe south of Cape Cod. I have to double check. I don't remember where exactly it was, but the very exciting part is that we had the first acoustically kind of triggered management area. So one of these recorders heard a whale and it kind of activated this management area with sort of dynamic adaptive speed restrictions, which is really cool. It's a nice interface between the bioacoustics work that we do and the conservation and management work.
That is so awesome. I didn't know that. It is really cool to see all these different fields kind of contributing to the greater cause of whale conservation, and that you're all connected no matter where you are. We're in all different parts of our country, and I think that's really incredible that all of you do different things. And we have our last 15 minutes, let's go around, and I would love to hear your favorite moments in your conservation life. A lot of people, like you said, I believe it was Sharon who said, we have moments that no one gets to experience, that our pockets may not be full of riches, but we definitely have experiences that no one else gets to. So Sharon, let's hear your favorite moment in your beautiful career you've had.
Right whale moment or moment?
Any moment.
I think I'm gonna go away from right whales, although it's not entirely dissimilar. The first season I did research up in Canada, I was on an inflatable boat in the middle of the Gulf of St. Lawrence, and it was my first sighting of a blue whale. And I was supposed to be taking data on respiration and behavior and being very professional with a professional crew, because I've been doing research for a while, so I feel better. But as it approached the inflatable, it turned slightly and went directly under the boat.
Oh, wow.
And they are enormous. And I just lost my professional mind and looked at the side of this whale that kept coming and coming and coming, coming, because it was so big. And it came up the other side and I heard it exhale. And the guy who's in charge is going, the data. I just completely screwed up my behavioral sequence because I just was so excited to see it. It turned around and came back toward the boat, and it rolled slightly, and I couldn't see the eye, but I felt like it was looking at us. And all of a sudden I lost all of my professional calm and elan and screwed up the data and acted like a little girl. And I'm not apologizing.
No, never. I don't think you should. Kick down that emotional door. I love that. There was a moment when I worked at Pacific Whale Foundation. In our career, we have to do some weird things. So I was, serving food on this boat, and I was not meant to be teaching at the time, but a pod of false killers swam by, and the population in Maui, it's very small. Grace, do you know what the population is there?
the insular population of false killer whales in the main Hawaiian Islands is estimated to be around 150 individuals.
Right.
They are that is they're endangered, and fisheries interaction is one of the larger issues. And so there's a lot of work going into a take reduction team and plans to work through that right now.
Yes, exactly. So those guys, there's not a lot of them. And there was a pod of it was about the third of the group. And I was serving food. It was a dinner cruise, and I lost my professional mind and I started crying. So me and all the other servers started crying, and we got out our phones, and like some of the people who are on there really just are there for food. They are really not there to learn anything. And so they're kind of like, my steak, please. And I'm like, do you not see them? Like, there's only 150 of them. Do you not realize like the moment we are experiencing? So I have definitely been there and can relate heavily. Jessica, can you relate at all? What moment did you lose your professional mind?
There have been several, but it's been nice because kind of, thinking back through them, I'm like, oh, do I talk about this one or talk about that one? Because they're just such amazing animals, right? I mean, half the time you're like, they breathe and you get really excited. And how many animals can you necessarily say that for? But one of my favorite experiences definitely happened when I was out at Allied Whales Research Station, which is Mount Desert Rock. It's about 25 miles offshore in the Gulf of Maine. And it's just, there's nothing around you. It's about 3 acres of granite with a lighthouse and a lightkeeper's house. And so we'd stay out there for a few weeks at a time. And one of the nights it was just glassy, calm, mirror waters, right around sunset time. So we were getting to the time where we were expecting to see some, we called them dinner whales, because they would come and lunge feed around in the productive areas around the island. And we took out one of the little inflatable boats. The station manager took out myself and one of the other folks who was working that day, and just to kind of cruise around, see if we could see anything before, it got too dark to do boat work. And in that, 20-minute little tool around, we had white-sided dolphins that were bow riding underneath the inflatable. And so I just remember like hanging over the front of the inflatable, which you're not supposed to do. But we were holding on, it was fine. And just seeing them through this like glassy water, it was like there was no barrier there at all. And then like 5 minutes later, we all screamed because there was a lunge feeding fin whale who was, probably pretty far away, but loud because it was so quiet, because there's just nothing there. We had shut down the boat just to kind of watch this bait ball and see if anything turned up. And there was just this fin whale that came out of absolutely nowhere, surface lunge feeding. And I just remember being really struck by how huge and graceful this animal was. And it was amazing.
That's, yeah. We really do have some amazing moments, and sometimes we just have to remember those when it gets tough. Kathy, do you have a moment that you hold with you sometimes when it gets tough?
Yeah, I mean, I have similar short stories to what Sharon and Jessica already shared. Being close to these amazing animals is just awe-inducing. But one thing that stands out to me is when we do our disentanglement work, we're often very close to the whale, and our safety zone is kind of in the notch of the whale's tail. If this is the whale's tail, like this is where we want to be, where we're least likely to be hit by the whale. And I remember being at the bow of we always do our work in small boats. And I remember being at the bow of that boat and holding the line that was coming off of the whale, kind of right in that notch, knowing how close we were to the whale. And there's a lot of tension because the whale was free swimming, and all of a sudden the line went slack. And I knew that I hadn't let out any line, and the whale had moved, had stopped swimming, and kind of was directly underneath our small boat. And if the whale had wanted to do something, it could easily flipped our boat and greatly impacted us in a negative way, but it didn't do anything. It paused for a moment. I felt that slack line and pulled a little bit closer, and then the whale started swimming again. So just kind of one of those wow moments that hopefully I won't experience again, but
Yeah.
I'm glad that I have it to share with others.
That's amazing. I can't even imagine if I lose my mind at just false killers swimming by me. I can't imagine what I do if that happened. Grace, do you have a moment you'd like to share with everyone?
Yeah, I have a couple that come to mind. You know, being with large whales is just, it's quite powerful. And you know, you see their grace, and you see, like Kathy said, that they have some awareness. And so anytime I've been, had the experience of being mugged or having those humpback whales here in Maui, where they're breeding and giving birth, and when we've had some up close experiences, specifically, there was one time where we were doing some of our dedicated research with the University of Hawaii, doing drone research, and we got mugged by a juvenile, and it would not leave the boat, and it was, you know, the eye was right next to us, and it was quite impressive, and even as a juvenile, larger than the boat we were in. So that stands out in my mind as, you know, with a large whale, that's just so impressive to see the grace and the movement of those animals and their awareness with that vessel there. It was quite amazing. But another moment that stands out to me is I was doing work with Amazon river dolphins, and I had spent almost a year down in Brazil, and my parents were able to come and visit me in my field site in a very remote area. And it was really special for me the first time I brought them out on a boat, and they got to experience or see these animals, which, you know, conservation wise, these guys are facing a lot of issues. When I first started work down there, my family in Minnesota had never even heard of an Amazon river dolphin, knew nothing of the issues that they were facing, were confused, like, oh, if there's river dolphins in South America, why can't we just bring them up to the Mississippi? You don't have to go all the way down there, kind of thing. And so to bring education and awareness to people, and then have my parents actually experience seeing these animals that I'm so passionate about and excited working with, that was pretty powerful for me as well. They are, you know, not the most showy dolphins. You often only see a little bit of their head or their small dorsal fin, but a lot of it is, you know, just being in a very quiet area and just hearing those exhales. It was quite beautiful and quite exciting for me to, you know, share that with my family, who had been very supportive, as I said earlier. So that was just kind of maybe not the most like spectacular, you know, encounter, but powerful to me in a way that I felt like it was a way to move and change people's understanding, and to work towards education and just awareness of different species, you know, getting beyond the little bubble of Minnesota. So that was pretty cool.
That's awesome. And I strongly believe that that's why I do more of the naturalizing, more of the science communication. I believe that you don't protect what you don't love, and you don't love what you don't know. So I think science communication is extremely important for all the work that we all do collectively. So getting people who may not ever experience something like that to experience something like that is, as we all know, it's invaluable. And for those who don't know what a Maui mugging is when a whale comes up to your boat and doesn't allow you to leave. So you have to, you know, turn off or cut your engines, make sure you're not going to hurt that animal, and they're mugging you, but you want that to happen. They won't take your money, but they will take your heart for sure. So a Maui mugging is something that is desirable and not at all undesirable. We only have a few moments left. I just want to thank you ladies so much. You guys are heroes yourselves. I hope that the people listening are inspired by you. I know I have been. I know I just gained some heroes myself. So thank you ladies so much. If there is any advice that you have that you think is invaluable, I'd like for you to share it. For me, I think that it's worth it to know that following your dreams is not easy. It's not for the lighthearted. It's not for the weak. So I see all of you women as very strong. No matter what you've experienced, you've come such a long way. You've switched careers. You've been in this for over 40 years. You're just starting your career. You've moved all over. All of you have really amazing, wonderful stories. And I hope that at least the listeners feel inspired by you. Does anyone have any advice they'd like to give before we go ahead and boot off of here? Anyone?
I guess I will throw some out there. I guess my main thought is if you're interested in working with marine mammals, first of all, that there's a lot of different directions you can take to get there, whether it's policy and conservation, entanglement, research, and there's so many different aspects of this field. And as you said, it's not easy to get into, but I feel like, you know, any experience you can get is helpful, even if it's with terrestrial animals. If you're interested in biology and learning specifically for the research based is learning kind of the process of science is really important. And working in the field or statistics, those sort of things are all important skills that you need. And you can gain those in any, you know, basic field ecology if you're interested in doing field work or field-based research on marine mammals. But there's so many different paths to get to these places, as all of these women have shown. And so, as you said, it's a lot of work, and it's not an easy field. It's highly competitive, no matter what specific, you know, kind of aspect you're in, whether it's conservation or policy or, you know, any of those things. But there are a lot of different ways to get there, and so, you know, always being open to learn, and you learn in different ways outside of your specific desire can be helpful to get you where you are. I mean, look at changing careers and all of that.
Yeah, definitely. Just like Kathy, that's.
And I just add one thing, because I think a lot of the audience are not research people.
Absolutely,
Exactly.
go for it.
If you want to help whales join organizations, whether it's Oceana or the Humane Society or someone else, because the funding that you provide lets the folks who have the backgrounds or the whatever to be able to do that. And I think people feel like if you can't be out with the whales, you know, there's not much you can do. And the answer is that's not true. I mean, every little bit helps. A $10 contribution going into a big organization is adding to the pile, and adding to the pile allows people like all the folks who've been speaking to have the kind of job directly to make that benefit. So I think saving the whales can be a $10 contribution in the mail, and people shouldn't feel discouraged if you can't sit on the water with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely agree with that. You can even do things outside of a donation-based thing. People in their everyday life, decisions you're making in how you're living, with leading more conservation oriented lives can help the whales, marine debris, how are you dealing with single-use plastics. There are ways, you know, contributions to help the research and the people who are working towards the whales in the ocean are important, but there are little things even in how we're purchasing, you know, our food, looking at, you know, fisheries, and the sustainability of a lot of things. There's things that people can do in their everyday life that can be valuable, and that's a great point.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm so inspired by you guys. I'm very emotional, so I don't want to cry. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up and thank everyone for showing up. Thank you for coming. Thank you for supporting all of us and what we do. You guys are wonderful. You ladies are incredible and strong. And I hope that you all gained a new hero today, because I definitely did. Thank you all so much. And you guys have a wonderful holiday.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.